Hi, you're on the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night. We do this every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. The political left needs an underclass. Without an underclass, the political left is out of business. And yes, it's a business. This is not my ideas. This came from the Wall Street Journal editorial by Tyler Durden just a couple of days ago. He offers a number of illustrations. The state of California is taking a page out of Malcolm X's book to ensure that future generations of students know that capitalism is inherently racist and just as bad as the patriarchy, while supremacy and ableism, whatever that is not. This is according to a recent op-ed by Stanford University Hoover Institute research fellow William Evers. At issue is the state's Department of Education that has solicited public comments on something called a new ethnic studies model curriculum. They've asked for this information until August 15th, which is the middle of this week, which will dictate how public school teachers can instruct their students in the field of ethnic studies. It was created by an advisory board of teachers, academics, and bureaucrats. And Evers writes, it's as bad as you can imagine. Ethnic studies is described in the document as, quote, the interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, and indigeneity. Yeah, that's not even a word. With an emphasis on experiences of people of color in the United States. But that's not all. It's also a study of intersectional and ancestral roots, coloniality, hegemony, and a dignified world where many worlds fit for present and future generations. It is the ex-disciplinary, loving, and critical praxis of holistic humanity. I love the way these people talk. Nobody knows what that means. We don't have a meaning for any of that. We don't know how to define it. We don't have the slightest idea how to use it. But the document is filled with these fashionable academic jargon-like positionalities and hybridities and Nepantias, and I can't even pronounce the last one. It includes faddish social science lingo like cis heteropatriarchy that may make a lot of sense to radical university professors and activists, doesn't mean hardly anything to regular folks who send their children to California's public schools. It's difficult to comprehend the depth, the breadth of the ideological bias and the misrepresentations without reading the whole curriculum, something few will want to do. Beginning with economics, capitalism is described as a form of power and oppression. That alongside patriarchy, racism, white supremacy, and ableism. All bad stuff. Capitalism and capitalists appeared as villains several times in the document, according to the Wall Street Journal. As far as politics go, one of the proposed courses would explore the African American experience. Quote, from the pre-colonial ancestral roots in Africa to the transatlantic slave trade and enslaved people's uprisings in the antebellum South, to the elements of hip-hop and African cultural retentions. End of quote. Because? Well, because the best way, apparently, to move beyond the Southern Democrat history of slavery in America is apparently to constantly remind everybody about it. Teachers are encouraged to cite the biographies of potentially significant figures, people like Angela Davis, a criminal. Franz Fanon and Bobby Seale, another criminal. Convicted cop killers Mumia Abu Jamal and Assata Shakur are also on the list. That's not their real names. Students are taught that the life of George Jackson matters now more than ever. Do you know George Jackson? No? Well, Jackson, while in prison, became a revolutionary warrior for black liberation and prison reform. The Latino section's people of significance include Puerto Rican nationalist Oscar Lopez Rivera, a member of the paramilitary group that carried out more than 130 bomb attacks, and Lolita Lebron, who was convicted of attempted murder in a group assault that wounded 5 congressmen. The curriculum describes subprime loans as an attack on home buyers and low incomes rather than a misguided attempt by the government to help such home buyers. You do remember the low-income loans that were being offered about 10 years ago. That was a Democrat idea. It just about broke the lending institutions. The government ended up taking all of those mortgages and eating them. It was stupid. Borrowing 110% of the value of the home, no down payment, no matter who you were. They did that. Politicians, Republicans and Democrats, imposed lower underwriting standards on the home loan industries. The Republicans billed it as a way to expand the middle class. The Democrats, they were proud of the fact that it would aid the poor. This according to the Wall Street Journal. When it comes to Native Americans, California's new curriculum would have students, quote, offer their responses to a fictional environmentalist speech by Chief Seattle, as well as an anodyne quote about relationships from the recently deceased rapper Nipsey Hussle. According to Evers, who adds that the Chief Seattle error is part of a larger problem. Chief Seattle never existed. The curriculum perpetuates the myth that the Indians had the same values as present-day ecologists. And why do they call them Indians? They're not from India. Oh, but then the colonists thought they were in India. They're not Indians. In truth, Native Americans had a mixed approach to nature. The curriculum writers should have looked more carefully at the scholarly evidence presented by Shepard Creech's 1999 book, The Ecological Indian, about, for example, the setting of brush fires that got out of control and the needless killing of buffalo, beaver, and deer. However, if you're trying to foment a riot, and that's what this is about, facts can be very stubborn impediments. This whole program has drawn from the dregs of society and from the imaginations of people to form a reality that, if it ever exists anywhere, is destructive. And this is what California is going to try to do, or is trying to do with your children, to help them learn better, make them better citizens. I think we've gone about as far as we can go. What do you think?